Hey everyone. If you're a fan of mine, you're probably going to be a fan of the things that I'm a fan of. At least that's the approach that I take when I'm trying to get inspired by the photographers that I enjoy. Rather than just copy-pasting what they do, let's just try to take the inspiration from what they're inspired by in the first place. So I've got my phone here, we'll go through Instagram, show you a few of the accounts that I follow in no particular order, but just the ones that kind of motivate me to keep shooting. Let's get into it. So the very first account I've got here is Nori Inaguchi. None of these people I know personally, I don't think so, not on my list. But these people are people that I'm just excited about when they post so that it gives me something to look forward to and maybe perfect in my own work. So specifically with this guy over here, he's a photographer out in New York City, from what I've gathered. He does a lot of a beauty approach to still life photography, but within that he does it specifically with liquids, and even furthermore he does motion rather than just stills. This guy is really inspiring to me. He has a very clean and simple approach, and simple is the opposite of easy. It's made to look easy, but it really isn't. And I think he has a very technical and analytical approach to his work, and I enjoy that a lot. So I'm a big fan of his work, and yeah, worth a follow if you guys get a chance. All right, so next up we've got a packaging still life photographer, someone again, you know, to the point of like precision. And I think that's one of the things that I'm always I admire so much is the precision of the technicality behind still life photography. I think it's really neat. It's really fun to be able to be so precise and to just kind of be nitpicky and to create these worlds and these fantasies that don't otherwise exist. You know, like I feel like this is a photo that we all wish to take one day, you know, go to a store and be like, hey, that was me. So yeah, this is really neat. She's incredible. Yeah, there's so much work that goes behind the scenes on these types of shoots, and I always get love from the people around me for sharing behind the scenes stuff, and this is why I do it, and this is why I like it, because I get to see it on these bigger sets, and that's what I wish I was doing, and I just kind of share what I'm doing so far, and people that are maybe a year or two behind me are happy to see what I'm doing, and this whole little ladder type scenario. But yeah, she's great. I love her work. I love that she kind of shares her process and demystifies the whole thing. And yeah, cool. You know, be silly with your work. It's fun sometimes. Next up, we've got Chris Robinson. Not fan of the channel, Chris Robinson. By the way, thanks for leaving comments. And honestly, the first time you left a comment, I saw your name and I was like, but no, that can't be the same guy. But anyway, this is a photographer from Toronto. Really excellent, very clean, commercial portrait photographer that I'm just a big fan of. I've always been a fan of this type of lighting and this type of, I like the expression that he's able to grab out of the people, and he's just not afraid to be kind of cheeky with his concepts and just has fun with his photography, and I like that quite a bit. So that's something that I am inspired by, and that's why I'm inspired by this guy, and definitely worth a follow if you don't know of him already. Very, very, very well established, but also just really phenomenal photographer, you know. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember this series. So this was a really captivating series that honestly, like, part of me doesn't know how these are done. I'm assuming they're candids and composite candid style shots. Some of these are like, wait, let me see if I can find some of these like grand scale shots that have models in them. Okay, well, there's something like this. I feel like I've seen more examples of this before in this stuff, but we do have Maddie though. We gotta love Maddie. Maybe they're in the, okay, it's in the second shots of these ones. I was really, really impressed by these shots of, I guess, the Moab. Just beautiful, like this, yeah. No, just cool stuff, just really neat stuff. And I think this, like, I haven't really mentioned this, but this kind of goes into, this is a good way to mention how being an established and very successful photographer doesn't necessarily mean anything about, or doesn't correlate to your social media presence or following by any means. I think as a beginner photographer or someone starting out, even like me who's very early on in their career, I think it's a little bit more important to have this social media presence in order to remind people that, hey, I exist, this is me, this is what I look like, this is my work. And for what it's worth, I would say that every time I post on Instagram, there's like some random emails that haven't been answered yet that end up getting answered. People just tend to remember about you, and they're like, oh yeah, let me just answer that DM that I was leaving him on red for, or whatever. So it does help to have that social media presence, but you know, like I don't think that Chris is missing out on any jobs because he's getting 30 likes on these photos, because this is incredible work, and that's all that really matters. So post if you got it, and I think it does help, but it's really not necessary to being a successful photographer, and oftentimes it's vice versa. You know, you'll have like the big social media followings who are actually like not really working photographers, and the other way around, you know what I mean? So yeah, move on. Next up, another just really good still life photographer that I'm a fan of is part digital imagery, part really good photography mixed together. You create this really fun, you know, fantasy type world that is just really interesting. And I think you can create these things that are, you know, the better you can create it in camera, the better it's going to look if you digitally alter it later. So yeah, I'm just really a fan of his work. Again, something that isn't afraid to be kind of cheeky and comical and fun and silly with his work. And yeah, I'm a fan. Also, just a technically very, very solid. Like, I love when I can look at a photo and I'm not entirely sure how it was done, or you know, if the more I'm guessing, or the more I'm like, man, where does the editing end? Where does the photography start? How much of this is lighting? How much of this is editing? And I love when I'm guessing like that. You know, if I can look at your images and I'm guessing through it, it's making me think, then that's inspiring me. And if it's inspiring me, then maybe it'll inspire you. And that's the whole purpose of this video. So yeah, cool stuff. I'm a big fan. It's also neat when I'm like scrolling through and I can see a photo that I've already liked months ago, or years ago even. That means that, yeah, it struck a chord at that time, and it still strikes a chord today. But yeah, just really, really neat stuff. That is so much white and silver and glass, and wow, there's a lot of control in this. Really neat. Anyway, that's Michael. Moving on. Next up, we've got Chris Buck, who's a portrait photographer for all you portrait photographers. Someone who really kind of takes in that idea of story first and expresses it in his photography. I think I like that so much. It's never about the super complex, crazy lighting setup and lens choices, and it's about the person, and it's about a captivating story in a single frame. And I think that's the most important thing about portraiture in general. So you can tell who this man is without even reading the caption. You know, he does a great job at just being, you know, just showcasing who this person is and not worrying about how technical the lighting is or how whatever, you know. It's not about the photography, it's about the story. I think Chris does a great job at that. More so on story first, this is a photographer that I kind of just randomly came across, and he has this entire series on dads and their kids holding hands. And especially in, you know, these more industrial or manly situations, I think it's really neat to see such a, you know, powerful movement that's been documented for years, and he just keeps doing it in different environments. And I think that really speaks to the power of this series. Really, really big fan. I love every single shot. I think they all have something important to say. And yeah, the series as a whole is really powerful. I really like it. So give it a watch if you haven't yet. Yeah, really cool stuff. Valery, cool stuff, buddy. Next, another still life photographer, I believe from Toronto. Very silly. Does these cool stacks with his work. Does some really, really interesting work. These really, again, very precise type of still life artistry where it's, you know, everything is down to the millimeter, and it's just really impressive. It's nice to see someone put so much effort into something, or a group of people put so much effort into something, and it's just rewarding. It's neat. It's nice to be on the receiving end of pretty things, even if we're not the consumer of, you know, the ad that was being shot for. I think as photographers, we can learn so much just looking at images and looking at, like, the precision of this stuff, man. Yeah, it's really neat. You know, portrait work is cool because you get to have that free flow conversation with people. Every shot is different. You always have emotion. You always have like a little bit of, give and take. But that's what makes it so different than still life, is that apple is going to be an apple no matter what you do to it. So to make it extraordinary, that's what's super neat, and that's what's like, to me appealing to this type of photography. And different things appeal to me from portrait photography. Next up, we've got this photographer from Pacific Northwest, Oregon. Yeah, Bend. A lot of sports work and a lot of bike work. I'm a big fan of his, again, very technical process. Seems to be very clean, maybe a little bit more in editing, but also just a very technical, younger photographer, I believe, that is just, great at what he does. I'm a big fan of what he does. He did a 30-day challenge again at the start of the year, which is something that I think all of us kind of cycle through and go through, and it's just fun to see other people putting thought and effort into your craft, and it motivates you to put thought and effort into your own craft. So that's another person that really inspires me. So next I've got another still life photographer, very bright, very colorful, just stuff that I'd like to shoot more of, and I'm just a fan of, and I try to get inspired by, to see how other photographers are shooting it, how are things that I could implement into my own work, or things that I could kind of pull from and take from, and just see what works and see what doesn't, see how other people are doing it in the industry, what's industry standard in New York, versus my market. And yeah, just a fan of his work. Really hard light, really punchy, bold, expressive stuff. And yeah, I'm just a fan of the work that they produce, so that's cool for me. That's why I get inspired by them. Honestly, I could probably do this for hours, but I'm just gonna cut the video there. If you guys liked it, I'll do a second one. But yeah, there's just a few accounts that I follow and I'm a big fan of, so if you guys like them, give them a follow, give me a subscribe if you haven't already, and yeah, I'll see you guys in a couple days. Later.